Hello. It looks like we're recording. So, hi, everyone. My name is Kelsey, and I'm here with Dr. Ron Rigby. We're both with Why Wait, and so today we're going to talk about sugar, alcohols, artificial sweeteners, which kind of comes up quite a bit with going low carb. And there's a lot of confusion out there. So, Dr. Rigby, what are your thoughts about artificial sweeteners?
Well, first of all, our goal is with a low carb type diet is to try to get rid of sugar. So if you can do it without a sweetener, all that much better. However, if you're going to use sweeteners, there are some that are better, at least in my opinion, better than others. And that's kind of where we're at, is the pros and cons of those different things. So, because unfortunately they go, well, if we have them, it's going to trigger cravings. And some people it does.
Mm-hmm.
And it also can increase your insulin levels, which unfortunately, what we're trying to do is actually lower your insulin. So that could trigger and bump that up. So we're trying to avoid those and try to make better choices. And there's a lot of choices out there. And the ones that I like basically would be stevia or stevia, depends on how you want to pronounce it, monk fruit, erythritol, xylitol, and allulose. Now, keep in mind, everybody reacts different, so you can't go, oh, Dr. Rigby or Kelsey said do this, and it screws me up. Well, avoid it.
Right. And I actually agree with all those recommendations. So artificial, because there's sugar alcohols and there's those artificial sweeteners. Touch base on that, if you don't mind.
Yes.
So do you like the sugar alcohols more than the artificial sweeteners, such as sucralose or saccharin?
And I guess another aspect to look is the non-caloric sweeteners.
Yes.
Because you got the sugar alcohol, the artificial, and the non-caloric. So the non-caloric are the ones that I like, and that would be more stevia and the allulose. Well, allulose isn't totally, but it's a lot lower caloric.
Mm-hmm.
But getting the sugar alcohols, that's where you get the erythritol and the xylitol. And then the monk fruit kind of is back in that non-caloric or lower caloric sweetener aspect. The sugar alcohols, it can, if you do a lot of it, can cause some GI distress. So you have to be careful with that. So if you're going to start with really high levels, you always hear the story of people getting a sugar or sugar-free gummy worms or something like that and just eating whole bag, and their gut doesn't like them because they spend a lot of time in the bathroom.
Yep.
So if you're going to start with those, start slow and gradually increase it.
Yeah.
Again, then there's some argument as to how does it play with your gut microbiome and stuff like that. So everybody's different. You have to be careful with what you're doing, but be careful with it. But those sugar alcohols, erythritol and xylitol, your body actually makes at very lower levels. So that's why it's one of the better ones to do versus the artificial, kind of like aspartame and acetosulfate potassium, sucralose, being more the artificial or basically man-made versions versus the natural where the monk fruit and their stevia come into play.
Right. And so I always say moderation and variety is good. I see what your body tolerates, but don't just stick to one sweetener. Yeah. There's some information out there about the impacts of too much stevia. Have you read anything about that?
I read over a book about that whole stevia. What's the title of the book? The stevia starts with a D, kind of like code or not code. Being deceived. I think it's the stevia deception. There we go.
Yeah. Okay.
And the idea is going, oh, it's you can eat all you want. No, really you can't. It's going to bump up anything that's a sweetener. When you put it in your mouth, or you even start thinking about eating it, can actually bump up your insulin. Right. Because if you walk into a pastry store and you start smelling it, your insulin level starts to climb. Well, if you walk out and not eat anything, your insulin starts to come back down. So it's not going to affect you that much. But if you now eat it or put it in your mouth and start sucking on it and then spit it out, your body still is absorbing some of that sweetener or the sugar or whatever. And then as soon as your body starts breaking it down, your body's already making the insulin. So again, not being around it's going to be your best bet. However, it's not going to bump it as much if you eat the whole thing and just keep going and going and going.
I agree with all that. The only sweetener, artificial sweetener or it's more of a sugar alcohol that I'm aware of that has a glycemic index is maltitol.
Yeah.
So that one, I've noticed that in a lot of like sugar-free candies, like chocolates, caramels, that will bump up your, because it's a glycemic index around 36. So still lower than sugar, but it does have one. So it's going to impact your blood sugar a lot more than some of the other ones.
And another way I look at it, and at least I'm just using me as an example, and again, I still think erythritol is one of the decent ones to use, but if I get too much, I almost start craving it. So that's another thing to look at is if you start craving something, be careful with it, because I've had some sweeteners and it's almost like that cooling sensation in your mouth, but almost like, ooh, I can't wait to have another one. I want more. I want more. So if something like that happens to you, no matter what the sweetener is, back off.
I completely agree.
Careful with
food,
it.
Yeah, food is supposed to be like your fuel. You shouldn't be craving or addicted to it nonstop.
Exactly.
So, all right, super. Well, do you have anything else you want to mention?
Be smart with what you eat. Again, like Kelsey says, is fuel should be, or food should be your fuel. You shouldn't overdo it. Be smart. Wait till you're truly hungry. And again, people go, another aspect is what about the natural things? What about fructose and stuff like that? Again, if it's coming from the fruit and you're actually eating the fruit, that's a lot better than having high fructose corn syrup. And that's a whole nother discussion we didn't have with this one.
Nope.
But if it's coming from the natural source and eating that natural food, it's a lot better option.
Yeah, and if you eat it with other types of food, so if you eat your fruit with, nuts or nut butters, all of that will help to slow the digestion and insulin glucose spikes.